There is a law most have forgotten, a sacred principle, hidden in plain sight for countless centuries. Everything in this vast universe responds to its right name with unwavering precision. Animals, people, and even money itself operate according to this fundamental spiritual law that governs all of creation. Call a dog by name, and it runs to you with eager loyalty. Call a child, and they turn their head immediately with recognition. Call money by its true name with genuine understanding, and it does the same, flowing to you with natural obedience that governs all relationships between consciousness and manifestation. Yet most people never speak money's true name. They have forgotten the sacred words that command prosperity. Instead, they speak fear, uttering words of scarcity and limitation that repel the very thing they desperately seek. They speak doubt instead of faith, declaring lack as though these were unchangeable laws of nature. They voice complaints about their financial circumstances, never realizing that every word is a decree sent directly to the creative forces of the universe. And then they wonder in growing confusion why money does not appear in their lives, why abundance remains elusive despite their desperate efforts and sincere prayers, why prosperity seems to bless everyone else while avoiding them completely. They work harder, save more diligently, invest more carefully, yet still find themselves struggling with the same financial challenges year after year. Tonight I restore to you the forgotten law of naming, a teaching so powerful that Florence Scovel Shinn guarded it carefully, sharing it only with students who had proven themselves ready to understand its profound implications. This is not mere positive thinking or wishful hoping. This is ancient wisdom, biblical truth, and spiritual law operating with the same reliability as gravity or magnetism. In this profound lesson, I will show you exactly how to speak to money as law itself, how to call it by its right name, so it cannot escape your command, so it must flow to you as naturally as water flows downhill. You will discover the precise words that open the floodgates of abundance, and the specific phrases that command prosperity to manifest in your experience. You will learn why careless speech keeps money far away from you like a powerful repelling force, creating invisible barriers that block the flow of abundance, no matter how hard you work or how desperately you pray. You will understand why the tongue either multiplies your supply exponentially or dissolves it completely, and how a single shift in your naming can turn crushing poverty into overflowing plenty. By the end of this comprehensive teaching, you will not only know the exact words to call money with authority, but you will understand the spiritual law that forces it to obey your command with mathematical precision, responding to your voice like a well-trained servant eager to fulfill your every desire. Before we dive deep into these life-changing secrets, please hit the like button if this message is resonating with your spirit. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from today, and make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell, because I'll be sharing more forbidden teachings that can revolutionize your relationship with abundance forever. You may have tried budgeting with meticulous precision, tracking every penny with obsessive dedication. You may have attempted scrimping and saving, depriving yourself of simple pleasures in hopes of building security. You may have even spent hours begging God, desperately for supply in tearful prayers. Yet the bills keep mounting like an unstoppable avalanche, and the worry grows heavier with each passing day. You may have spoken words of affirmation with sincere dedication, repeating positive phrases morning and evening with religious devotion. You may have visualized abundance, created vision boards, and practiced gratitude exercises, but still seen no tangible result in your bank account or financial circumstances. The numbers remain stubbornly unchanged, opportunities continue to elude you, and financial pressure keeps building despite your best efforts. This persistent struggle happens because your mouth still called money by the wrong name in idle talk, in casual conversation with friends and family, in moments of frustration when your guard was down. You sabotaged your own demonstrations through careless speech, speaking poverty into existence, while simultaneously trying to affirm abundance. But tonight you will discover why idle words carry as much creative power as deliberate affirmations, why every careless statement is a seed planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. Here's something most people completely miss. Though it is as plain as the sunrise, and as old as the sacred scriptures themselves, everything in this universe responds to its name with unwavering consistency and mathematical precision. This is not metaphor or symbol. It is literal spiritual law operating continuously throughout all dimensions of existence. Call a child by name, and they turn their head immediately, even in a crowded room filled with noise and distraction. Call a dog and it comes running with tail wagging, abandoning whatever else captured its attention. Call a friend across a busy street, and she lifts her hand to wave in acknowledgement. Do you think money operates differently from these examples? Do you believe it somehow exists outside the laws that govern all other aspects of creation? Money is not dead matter, lifeless paper, or meaningless numbers displayed on a screen. It is energy in motion, spiritual vibration clothed in physical form, divine substance expressing itself in the material realm, according to the same laws that govern all manifestation. It carries consciousness, responds to intention, and flows according to the commands of those who understand its true nature and speak to it with proper authority. When you call money by its right name with genuine understanding, clear intention, and unwavering faith, it must answer just as surely as any living being responds to its proper name. This is not wishful thinking. It is spiritual law in action, as reliable and predictable as any physical law discovered by science. But here lies the great tragedy that keeps millions trapped in financial struggle. Most people never call money by its true name. They have been conditioned by society, religion, and family to speak of money in terms that create fear, guilt, and separation rather than confidence, gratitude, and command. Instead of calling money by names that attract, they use false names that repel scarcity, expense, burden, difficulty, impossibility, evil, dirty, corrupting. They speak of money as their enemy rather than their friend, as their master rather than their servant, as something to be feared rather than welcomed. They say things like, money doesn't grow on trees, implying limitation. They declare, money is the root of all evil, creating guilt around abundance. They complain that money is so hard to come by, establishing struggle as the natural state. They lament that, I never have enough money, programming lack into their subconscious through constant repetition. And then they wonder why money hides from them, like a shy animal fleeing from harsh treatment, why it seems to avoid their desperate grasp, no matter how hard they work, why abundance flows freely to others, while remaining elusive in their own experience. The law governing this phenomenon is simple and unchangeable. By thy words, thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. These are not merely scripture verses. They describe the actual mechanism by which consciousness creates reality through the spoken word. If you consistently condemn money with your tongue, speaking of it with fear, resentment, or limitation, it will withdraw from you like a sensitive being recoiling from harsh treatment. Your words create an atmosphere of resistance that pushes abundance away, no matter how much you might consciously desire it. Conversely, if you justify money by naming it rightly, speaking of it with respect, command, and recognition of its divine nature, it will come at your call like an obedient servant eager to fulfill your desires. Your words create an atmosphere of attraction that draws prosperity with magnetic force. Why does this principle work with such mathematical precision? The answer lies in understanding your subconscious mind, that vast reservoir of consciousness operating beneath your everyday awareness. faithfully recording and reproducing every impression you consistently make upon it. The subconscious operates like the most sophisticated recording device ever created, capturing every word you speak, every phrase you repeat, every label you attach to anything in your experience. It functions like a cosmic stenographer, taking down every statement with perfect accuracy. This faithful servant does not argue with your statements or analyze their logic. It does not reason about their wisdom or evaluate their consequences. It does not distinguish between conscious declarations and casual remarks, between serious affirmations and joking comments. It does not say, "Oh, she was only joking," or "he didn't really mean that." The subconscious simply records everything with mechanical faithfulness, and then works tirelessly to play back those recordings in your physical experience through the law of correspondence. It treats every word as a command to be fulfilled, every statement as a blueprint to be constructed, every declaration as a destiny to be manifested. Florence Scovel Shinn illustrated this with the story of a student who became overwhelmed by managing her home. Feeling burdened by domestic duties, she began saying to friends, "I wish I lived in a trunk. It would be so much simpler." She laughed when she said it, finding humor in the absurd image. Her friends laughed too, enjoying the joke. But the subconscious did not laugh. It wrote the record with serious precision, treating her words as a clear command. Soon enough, through circumstances she could never have predicted, her comfortable home was lost through financial reversals. Her possessions were sold or given away, and she found herself living exactly as she had, jokingly, declared, with nothing but a single trunk containing all her worldly possessions. Only then did she realize the incredible power of casual words and understand why Shinn had warned about the creative force of seemingly idle speech. She had spoken her own destiny into existence through words she thought were harmless. Now imagine what happens when you attach wrong names to money day after day in countless conversations that seem harmless, but are actually shaping your financial destiny. Every casual complaint about money creates a decree of limitation. Every frustrated statement plants seeds of continued struggle. Money is so hard to get. You might say in frustration, commanding money to be difficult in your experience. It never stays with me long. You declare with resignation, programming your subconscious to create circumstances where money flows out as quickly as it flows in. Money just slips through my fingers, you complain, establishing a pattern of financial instability. I can't afford it, you state when considering a purchase, speaking poverty as though it were unchangeable fact. I'm always broke, you joke with friends, not understanding that your subconscious takes this declaration seriously and works to make it consistently true. Money doesn't come easily to people like me. You might think, establishing your identity as someone for whom abundance is naturally difficult. I'll probably be poor for the rest of my life. You might declare in despair, creating a prophecy your faithful subconscious will work to fulfill. Every single one of those sentences is a powerful decree sent to your subconscious with instructions for creation. Every statement is a seed planted in the creative soil of your consciousness, carrying the DNA of its own manifestation, according to spiritual law. What harvest can such seeds of limitation bring except more lack, mounting debt, and endless delay in your financial demonstrations? What crop can grow from seeds of poverty except more poverty, struggle, and frustration? The tongue truly is the rudder of your life's ship. Though it is small, it steers your entire existence toward prosperity or poverty, abundance or lack. If you consistently turn that rudder toward scarcity through careless speech, you will steer straight into financial struggle. But the reverse is equally true and infinitely more empowering. If you learn to call money by its right name, if you train your tongue to speak words of abundance and prosperity, then your subconscious must accept those new records and your life must play them back as supply, abundance, and financial ease. The transformation begins when you understand that money, in its essential nature, is divine substance, spiritual energy expressing itself in material form, to serve human needs and fulfill righteous desires. It is not separate from the creative force of the universe, but is that force made manifest to facilitate abundance, flow throughout human society. When you speak of money from this elevated understanding, when you address it as divine substance, rather than dead matter, when you command it as spiritual energy, rather than begging it as scarce resource, everything about your relationship with money begins to change at the deepest levels. Begin immediately to call money by its sacred names. Money is divine substance flowing freely to me now. Money is spiritual energy responding to my word with perfect obedience. Money is God's provision made manifest in my experience. Money is abundant, obedient, and eager to serve my highest good. Replace every negative money statement with positive truth. When tempted to say, "I can't afford it," immediately substitute, "It comes to me under grace in perfect ways." When inclined to declare, "Money is hard to get," speak instead, "Money flows to me easily and naturally." When feeling like saying, "Money never stays with me," affirms, "Money multiplies and increases as it serves me faithfully." This is not mere positive thinking. This is conscious participation in the creative process. Deliberate alignment with spiritual law. Intentional cooperation with forces of abundance. Always seeking expression through those who understand their nature. Here we arrive at one of Florence Scovel Shinn's most powerful techniques, a method so effective it can transform your financial reality within days, when applied with consistency and faith. She discovered that writing your money decree on your mirror creates fusion between yourself, image, and financial identity that penetrates to your subconscious core with irresistible force. The mirror is more than simple glass reflecting your appearance. It serves as a sacred portal to the hidden chambers of your soul, a direct window into your deepest sense of identity. When you gaze into your reflection each morning and evening, you encounter the image of who you believe yourself to be at the most fundamental level. Your subconscious accepts whatever image you consistently hold of yourself as absolute truth. If you look into the mirror daily and see yourself surrounded by words of poverty and limitation, your subconscious writes that identity deep into consciousness and works to make your external circumstances match that internal picture. But when you write your money decree boldly across your mirror and see yourself reflected beside those words of abundance day after day, something profound happens. Your subconscious begins fusing your self-image with the financial identity declared by those powerful words, creating an unbreakable bond between who you are and what you possess. The subconscious looks at this combined image and says with growing conviction, "This is who I am. This is my true nature. This is the reality that must be expressed. I am someone who lives in abundance. I am someone whom money serves gladly. I am someone who operates from prosperity consciousness." Let me share the remarkable story of a woman who applied this technique with extraordinary faith. She had struggled with financial lack for years, working multiple jobs, but never getting ahead, paying bills but never building security. When she learned about the mirror technique, she decided to test its power with complete commitment. She wrote, "Wealth," in bold letters across her bathroom mirror. Each morning and evening, she saw herself reflected beside that powerful declaration. She did not strain or struggle, or try forcing results. She simply allowed that image of herself united with wealth to sink deep into consciousness day after day. Within 1 week, she received a phone call that changed her life forever. A relative she hadn't heard from in years had remembered her in his will, and she was inheriting $50,000. The world would call this coincidence, but Shinn recognized it as spiritual law in perfect operation. The woman had written, "Wealth upon her mirror with faith, and her subconscious had written wealth upon her life with the same precision. It brings to all commands impressed with genuine conviction. What I tell you now may be the greatest safeguard of your entire financial demonstration. Once you grasp this principle and practice it faithfully, you will never again sabotage your prosperity through careless speech. You must guard your tongue as you would guard the most precious treasure. The tongue is both sword and scepter. It wounds when used carelessly, cutting away the very blessings you seek to attract, but it rules with absolute authority when wielded with conscious mastery, commanding circumstances to align with your spoken word. Though the tongue is small, it steers your entire life like a rudder steering a massive ship. If your ship has been sailing toward financial lack, if your voyage has been plagued with storms of debt and waves of overwhelming bills, do not look first to external circumstances. Look to your rudder. Examine what you have been saying day after day about money and your financial situation. Guarding your tongue does not mean enforcing complete silence. It means establishing discipline, training your speech to bless rather than curse, to speak life rather than death, to call money by its right name rather than false names. When you catch yourself about to say, "I can't afford it," you reach a crucial moment of choice. You can either release that curse upon your supply, or transform it instantly into blessing. Stop mid-sentence and declare instead, "Money comes to me under grace in perfect ways to provide everything I need and desire." I remember counseling a student who had faithfully practiced morning affirmations for months but saw minimal results. She came discouraged, saying, "I repeat the prosperity words you taught me each morning, yet my purse remains light and bills remain heavy. What am I doing wrong?" I asked her a penetrating question. "What do you say about money during the other 23 hours of your day?" She paused, then confessed that throughout each day she complained to friends, "I'm broke. I can't manage. Everything costs too much. I'll never get ahead." I explained gently, "You are planting roses in the morning and weeds in the afternoon. Which crop do you expect to flourish?" She wept as she recognized her own sabotage. But from that moment she committed to guarding her speech throughout the entire day. Whenever tempted to speak words of financial lack, she would stop immediately and declare instead, "God is my instant, constant, and lavish supply of every good thing." Within weeks, prosperity evidence began appearing. The roses she planted with her tongue began overcoming the weeds, and her financial garden blossomed. Let me reveal one of the most potent accelerators of financial manifestation, a principle so powerful it can collapse time and bring demonstrations into form with breathtaking speed. This secret is thanksgiving. Not thanksgiving that comes after receiving what you want, but thanksgiving offered courageously before seeing any evidence of change. Most people approach financial needs with long faces heavy with worry, begging the universe to grant desperate requests, pleading with God for mercy on overwhelming circumstances. They affirm with wary repetition, as though heaven must be worn down through persistent petition. They pray from lack consciousness, speaking about what they don't rather than what they do have, focusing on absence of supply rather than its presence, emphasizing need rather than fulfillment. This approach reinforces the very condition they seek to change, programming their subconscious with more experiences of wanting and needing rather than having and enjoying. But true thanksgiving operates from entirely different consciousness, completely different understanding of how the creative process works. Thanksgiving is the vibration of possession, the emotional signature of someone who already has what they desire, the natural response of someone who recognizes that their good is already established in the invisible realm. When you give genuine thanks before evidence appears in physical experience, you make a powerful declaration to the law of manifestation. This is already mine in the realm of spirit. I am not asking for something absent from my life. I am acknowledging something present, but not yet visible to physical sight. But your thanksgiving becomes a statement of faith, demonstration of confidence in spiritual law, and command to creative forces of the universe to hurry manifestation of what has been established in consciousness through faithful decree and unwavering belief. Florence Scovel Shinn shared a beautiful example from her own experience. She once desired a rose tree for her garden, but had no money to purchase one. She did not storm heaven with desperate pleading or spend hours calculating how she might afford it. She simply pictured the rose tree, already blooming in her garden, gave heartfelt thanks for its presence, and felt the joy of already possessing this beautiful addition. The very next day, a friend ordered flowers delivered to Shinn as a gift. By what the delivery company called a mistake, they delivered a beautiful rose tree instead of the cut flowers ordered. But Shinn knew this was no mistake. It was law responding to gratitude, the universe delivering exactly what had been claimed through thanksgiving. Another student came carrying only $2 in her purse, feeling desperate about her financial future. Shinn instructed her with seemingly impossible advice. Bless this money. Call it your magic purse. See it bulging and overflowing with abundance. Give thanks for it, as though it already contained everything you need. The woman obeyed. Though it challenged every logical thought, she held her small purse and thanked God for its abundant contents, feeling genuine gratitude for the prosperity it represented. Within days, she received an unexpected gift of $6,000. Thanksgiving had transformed her $2 into thousands. Why does thanksgiving before evidence carry such extraordinary power? Because it signals to your subconscious that the work of manifestation is already complete. Fear says, what if it never comes? Faith says, I know it is already mine. But thanksgiving is the voice of absolute knowing, the sound of completed demonstration. Now we arrive at the heart of this entire teaching, the central revelation that can transform your relationship with money forever. For too long, money has been misnamed, mislabeled, and misunderstood. It has been called evil, dirty, scarce, difficult, and dangerous. These false names have created collective consciousness of fear and struggle around financial abundance. But Florence Scovel Shinn discovered the truth that sets us free. Money is divine substance, spiritual energy expressing itself in material form. It is not separate from God, but is God in action, providing for every need and fulfilling every righteous desire. When you understand this truth and speak it consistently, you align yourself with the true nature of prosperity. Begin today to call money by its sacred name. Do not call it scarce, call it abundant. Do not call it evil, call it divine. Do not call it your master, call it your obedient servant. Do not call it impossible to obtain. Call it eager to serve you. Write these words on your mirror and speak them with conviction. Money is divine substance flowing to me now. Money is obedient to my word. Money serves me under grace in perfect ways. I am supplied ahead of time with everything I need and desire. As you speak these words, feel their truth resonating in your consciousness. See money not as paper or metal, but as crystallized energy responding to your command. Know that you are not begging or pleading, but claiming what is already yours by divine right. The moment you begin calling money by its true name, everything changes. The fear disappears, because you understand money's spiritual nature. The struggle ends because you recognize your dominion over it. The lack dissolves because you align with the infinite abundance that is your birthright. Remember, always everything responds to its right name. Dogs come when called. Children turn when their names are spoken. Friends wave when recognized across the street. And money divine, obedient money, flows eagerly to those who call it by its sacred name with faith, authority, and grateful expectation. Tonight, stand before your mirror. Write the words of abundance where you will see them daily. Call money by its true name with conviction, and watch as the law of naming transforms your financial reality forever. The door is open. The treasure is waiting. And the only key you need is the right name spoken with unwavering faith. Your prosperity is not a hope. It is a certainty waiting to be claimed through the power of the spoken word. Call money by its sacred name, and prepare to receive abundance beyond your wildest dreams.